Why have you made tithing a priority?
Well, it's actually funny. Juliana and I, we come from a vastly different background when it comes to financial preparation. But the one thing that they taught both of us was how important it was to continually give through everything. Me personally, when I was younger, we went through some really tough times with my family, and seeing the faithfulness of my family and the blessings of God that was poured out on them after the just continued faithfulness through the drought, through the storms, it just solidified some faith in me that if we're faithful to God, then He'll be faithful back to us.
I was taught from a young age to tithe. From the age of 12, I started a babysitting job where I made like $20 a week, and every Sunday, $2 went in a tithe envelope to that church. And then the year I got a tithe statement of like $104. That was a huge deal at 12, but it was just what I was taught growing up.
Yeah, and I would kind of go with the same. How my wife said that at a young age for me, I would have been saved at a young age because I went to a Christian school, but my parents actually didn't go to church, so I didn't get the teaching from them. I didn't get it. I didn't go to church at a young age to get the teaching about tithing. But once I started to go to church regularly when I was in high school, then I quickly, caught on to the teaching about tithing and about giving. And I personally believe that, once you become a believer, once you're saved, that it kind of gets ingrained in you to be generous. And, you all of a sudden, once it's pointed to giving, then you're like, yeah, that's exactly what, I'm supposed to be doing. And so it just was natural to, once I became, an active member in the church, that, I'm going to tithe and I'm going to give. And I didn't have a steady job when I was in high school, but I certainly, at that point, God was definitely teaching with me that, hey, when you get in covenant with me through tithing and through giving, then I've got your back. And so that kind of stuck with me from high school. And then as I moved on, tithing and giving was definitely a plan in my life. So when I actually did get a first job, I was set. I'm going to tithe and I'm going to give. And when I purchased my first car and my first house, those were priorities in my decision-making process, that, tithes is important. And if I can't fit the car or the house into my budget with where my tithe is supposed to be, then that wasn't the house or that wasn't the car. And so early on, as a younger Christian, not as young now, it was a big impact, that the early teaching I had, and then that the fact that God was kind of sharing with me that, you stay in this covenant and God's got your back, and he always has. As April kind of pointed out, I certainly knew the difference in life where, my parents struggled financially growing up, and I haven't had the same type of struggle because of my faithfulness to tithe and to give. God's been faithful to keep me as well.
I asked you the question.
I know.
You told me to ask you the question.
No,
you had an answer.
Okay. Why have they made tithing a priority?
Well, really, it comes down to obedience. It's something that is clearly commanded in the Bible, and we're at a point in our walk where I felt like, if I'm going to be a part of this church, I need to be all in with the church, so to speak. So I need to be giving of my time and my talent, but also be giving a portion of my income. And personally, I've been in a lot of positions of poverty in my life, and a lot of times a lot of unemployment and things like that. And so whenever I finally got to a point that I could pay tithes, because I actually had a job, it was a joy for me to be able to give, especially because I had been so many times on the benevolence side of receiving from the church. It was like telling my church members and pastors that I needed help, and them giving me money for food or giving me money for paying my rent and stuff. And so being able to be on the other side and contribute to that so that somebody else could be blessed in a way that I had been blessed before.
Yeah, I remember very early on in our marriage, we decided that tithing was not going to be optional. Even if it made us short on extra money for that week, to go out or even buy groceries, we decided that we were going to pay our tithes first as a priority, and then our bills, and then, do with the extra what we had.
Yeah. All right, so how has God proved himself faithful to you?
Honestly, every day God continues to prove himself faithful. One thing I make a habit of praying with my kids about is just thanking God for being our provision. It's amazing to me that through all the years that me and Julian have been married, that we have never gone without. And to be fair, we have a family that loves us enough to help support us through some of those tough times. But that is just as much a blessing from God as just that extra little dollar, that you get, that you find in your pocket, But in more recent years, it's amazing to see how faithful God can be when you step out in faith. We took a step a couple years ago, step of faith, and started a business. And that business has just been, the only thing that could be expressed is that it's been God. It has totally been God. Just continual growth. When things look rough, it just all of a sudden, we see this massive boom, and we've had a year-over-year increase to where now, we're employing 15 people. We have 2 locations, an online shop, just bought a boutique trailer, and this is not bragging on us. This is bragging on the faithfulness of God. It is absolutely incredible that when you step out in faith and when you trust God with everything that you have, the things that He'll do for you, He said, just test me and see that I won't pour out the blessings of heaven.
Before Jeremy and I got married, I spent a season as a single mom. And honestly, from the beginning, my income did not match. Like, it wasn't going to work on paper. There wasn't enough money to pay my bills, much less to tithe. But I made it a point from the beginning, just trusting God through that whole process, that's what was coming first. And so I can think of a particular week where I missed church one Sunday, and the next Sunday I got there, and I knew, I owed God $100. That was my tithe for those 2 weeks. And that was all I had in my checking account. And I remember making the decision, I kind of battled with it a little bit as a mom, like, I've got to be able to take care of my kids, and this is it. So I made a decision to write the check for $100. And at the end of service, a friend came up to me, not knowing my financial situation at all, and gave me a hug and handed me a $100 bill just out of nowhere. And so at that moment, I knew, that person didn't have a clue what had just gone on. And I knew God was just saying, hey, I've got this. You do what you're supposed to do, and I'm going to take care of you. And that was kind of like a big eye-opener for me that that He was taking care of me. So I just needed to do what I was supposed to do.
God has proven Himself faithful because we've never been without. We've never been late on a bill. We've never not had something to eat. We might not have a ton of extra to, blow at Ruth's Chris, but
We've never been to Ruth's Chris.
Yeah, but
Taco Bell.
It's true. But we've never been without. We've never been lacking in anything. And now with Judah, we've never not had something for him. We've never been out of diapers, or when he was younger, we were never out of formula. We've never been out of food for him. Obviously, he is a priority, but because we've been faithful in our tithing, God has been faithful to take care of us.
Yeah, and there's been plenty of times where it's like looking at our bank account and, okay, we got all these bills, and if we pay our tithes and we pay all of our bills, we're going to have exactly 27 cents left in our bank account to get us
today.
get us through the next 2 weeks. And saying, God's going to take care of us.
Yeah.
That's really all there is to it. We don't know how, but I know that. And it's more important to know that God will take care of me than knowing exactly how it's going to happen.
Right.
What have you learned about God by being obedient?
That's a tough one.
Take it if you got to.
Because the depths of God, it's just, again, I'm floored, but I have learned, really, how much I can depend on God when I can't even depend on myself. Years ago, I went through a time for circumstances kind of beyond my control. I was let go from a job. Me and Juliana had recently bought a house, and and I fell apart. I lost it. I had never been in that situation before, to where I personally was going to be going through that kind of hardship. I had never been there. I had seen my family go through it, my parents go through it, a really tough time, but me personally, I'd never been in that spot before. I felt like I couldn't depend on myself. I felt like a failure to my wife, because I'm the husband. I wanted to be a positive role model for her. I wanted to be a brick, a steadfast, secure source of income for her, and I felt like I had failed myself. But through that process, God just continually just lifted me up and began to build some security in myself about who I was in Him, and that He was my provision, that my employer was not my provision, that was just a means that He got His blessings to me, was through my employer. So I guess that's what I've learned, just that how dependable God is, even when I'm not dependable to myself.
Excellent.
Here recently, God spoke something to us both. We were sitting in church one Sunday morning, and we've been giving consistently, but every now and then I'll feel like an urge to do a little something more, and I think it's just me, wanting to do something. But this particular day, God laid something on my heart, and I typed out a little message on my phone and showed it to Jeremy during church, and he confirmed it. And after church, we had a discussion about it, but it was just God telling us to do a little something extra in a different area, above our tithe, just to be generous in something else. And so we agreed to do that, and we did, and had a long discussion about it when we left church, and it just confirmed. God spoke to me, and He spoke to him at the exact same time in service. And it was really neat to know that, sometimes I'm feeling something, but it's not just me, it's God, telling me that. And that's probably the first time I've really had that confirmed. So that was a real powerful thing. But that week following us being obedient in that little act, we went out to eat with some people after church and had somebody pick up our check that week. That's never happened to me ever. We have a family of 6. That's unheard of. For somebody just to pay for our meal that we didn't know, nobody we knew, just somebody random, pick up our check. But also I had been stressing. I stress more the finances than he does. But I had been stressing some decisions we had to make about the kids, and the older kids in their private school tuition, and Kimber moving into high school, and the impact that was going to have on our finances. And that week, after being obedient and doing what God had told us to do, God worked all that out, completely worked it out to where what we needed to happen financially for our kids to go to the school we had wanted them to go to and prayed for them to go to, just magically happened, to where there's no increase whatsoever. And I mean, it was a miracle in our household, because that's a big deal. Just something I've been stressing about. So that's a huge blessing. And I just think when we're obedient and we do what God asks us to do, then it just opens the door for Him to bless us that much more.
Okay. What is a specific instance of trusting God in your finances?
One specific instance was losing my job, just trusting that God was going to take care of it, be my provision. Another instance was starting the business. When we started the business, we were both working full time. It started off small and began to grow. And shortly into it, I wanted to trust God enough and have faith in what God had put in my wife's heart to be able to run a business, that I stepped back and quit my job in order to see the business grow. It was a scary thing, just stepping out and saying, okay, my income is no longer going to come from, Wells Fargo, which is a multinational conglomerate that has the money available. The money's there, it's secure, to stepping out and saying, okay, I'm going to step back, because I believe God had given my wife a vision for our future. And so in faith, I stepped back and said, I want to help facilitate that growth, facilitate seeing what God has for us. So we took that step. We prayed about it, and we took that step. And God has, again, I can't brag enough about how much God has done for us in the past 3 years. Since we opened the business, God has just continually proven that if we're faithful, he'll just blow your minds. And we hadn't even started yet. Things are just getting started for us. And I'm so excited to see where God takes us next.
So when we first got married, an interesting story. So when we first got married, she already had a house. I already had a house. And so we actually had to pay for our wedding. And so starting out, the paying for the wedding, kind of put us into, a tighter financial, position. And
he wanted all this fancy stuff.
Right. And 2 houses really didn't fit into that budget line. So we had to make a decision, and it was like sell, rent, and the sale market at the time was not very good at all. So we made a decision that we were going to rent, and for me personally, that was something that I had never been involved in at all. So we were certainly nervous about that, and how quickly can we get a tenant in, and is it going to be a good tenant? These were certainly things that we were certainly stressing there right after we got married. So not that we didn't pre-plan, but it kind of hit us at that point. Oh, well, we got this big decision to make. And so coincidentally, what happened, well, it wasn't coincidence, God thing, which you'll see in a minute, is that the church we were at, we were having a guest pastor from South Africa come, and he needed a place to stay. And conveniently, I had just moved out of my house, and we said, okay, well, he can spend a week and a half, or I forget how long exactly it was, at my house while I was empty. And so we made a decision. We were a little bit nervous because that meant we were going to stop. We weren't going to advertise it as early as, so we were kind of getting out there on the limb, because we were like, we could only go like 1 month beyond. And so we were really, stressing in our natural minds about this. And so he stayed that week and a half or whatever, and it was like over that final weekend when he left. Come that first Tuesday, we formally put it out on the market to be rented. By Thursday, we had tenants who were that needed to be in it that Saturday. So it happened just that quickly. God, provided basically a miracle for us in that instance, that from Tuesday when we advertised it, Thursday we had a tenant, and Saturday they were moving in. And so, we had to we had to get things ready quickly. And so God's blessing was immediate and profound. And, it's definitely in my spirit that God was, again, referenced back to me that, hey, you're a tither. You've been faithful to me. I'm going to be faithful to you. And he certainly was in that instance. And that same group it was college students, the same group of guys that rented it initially then, basically that same group of guys is still renting from us today. And so, God certainly blessed and provided the need in that instance. The Bible says that, if we test God, that he's going to open up the heavens, and he certainly did for us in that time, opened up the heavens and provided for our need in that moment.
That's the crazy thing, is it's not like, oh man, let me think of an instance that happened. It's like, okay, which one do we want to talk about?
Yeah, there's not any one that, it's just like, okay, let's pick from the plethora.
It's so many different instances, from paying our last bit of money into tithes and maybe giving something extra for offering, and somebody coming up to us after church and saying, hey, God just told me to give you this, and giving us more than we put in for tithes and offering. Or times where we had no idea how something was going to happen, how something was going to work out, and we get a refund check in the mail for something we didn't know we got refunded.
Like a medical bills?
Yeah, we had like medical bills get refunded. We overpaid on a copay years ago, and we just
like $84.
Yeah, like $84 or something like that. And it's like, oh hey, look, we just paid that in our tithes, and we weren't sure how we were going to make it. And then this thing comes in, and now we have enough money to get through. And even during times of unemployment, There's been a couple times some unfortunate things happen, specifically for me. You've had a pretty stable career at Regions, but for me, it wasn't always that way. There were several times where I went without employment.
Our wedding,
Yeah.
just before we got married, I did lose my job.
Yeah, that's right.
And I lost my job. I lost the apartment that I had because it was part of the job. So I had to find a new apartment and somehow pay for a wedding. But through our faithfulness and paying tithes on what little I was making when I found a job, all of our wedding expenses were taken care of. We either got it for free or something
cheap.
Discounted. Yeah, I don't think we paid full price for anything.
Yeah, and
So that is a prime example of God's faithfulness.
And then more recently, right before I got the job working at Cook's, I had a different job working for somebody else, and they came in one day, some things hadn't worked out, and said, "Hey man, we can't afford to pay you anymore, so we're gonna have to let you go. Here's your paycheck for last week and this week, and good luck." And we just bought a house, we just bought a car, got a kid, got a wife. So they're like, "Okay, that's great, thank you." And now we have one income with two families under one roof, and trying to figure out how in the world this is going to work out, and choosing to trust God anyways. And whenever we were wondering where money to pay something was going to come up, somebody had some odd jobs they needed help working. Somebody had, in this one specific instance, I'm not even going to say who the person was that did it, but they're like, "Hey man, I need help doing this thing over here. If you want to come and help me out, I'll give you some money." I said, "Okay, cool." And I went over there, and we basically ended up just talking, because what he was doing I had no experience in, and I was absolutely useless in it. And we just ended up talking, and he gave me $100.
Yeah, or a family member saying, "Hey, how much do you guys need for your car note?"
Oh, yeah.
And paying that. Or another family member saying, "How much do you need for your mortgage?" and paying half of that. So
Yeah.
like we said, there's countless times that God has just been faithful because we have been faithful in our tithes and not letting it be an option.
And every single time that God provides for us in some way, it just builds on that foundation of faith. So the next time something comes around, I can know that God's got me taken care of. And I know that while my job is good and her job is good, that at the end of the day, my job isn't our provider, her job isn't our provider, but God is our provider. And whether we have our jobs or not, we will always have him, and he will always be there to take care of us. Yeah.
And
Oh, we got all that?
Oh, yeah.
Outtakes.
You gotta have outtakes.
Right.
That's fine.
Where's Jeremy?
They're gone.
Oh,
He gone.
I was like, they can't be gone. They're watching my kid.
All right.
Can I just sit here and read?
Yeah, that's fine. No, you're good.
How's my hair?
Your hair looks great.
Okay.
So this thing stabilizes.
Okay, so tell me. Oh my God, am I good at improvising? I'm not.
Am I shiny? My forehead shiny?
I changed my mind.
Yeah, she's not good on the fly.
This light is really bright.
Can I just sit here and read?
Yeah, that's fine.
I didn't put lip gloss on or anything.
We're recording now?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Am I supposed to like speak to the camera, or am I just talking to you?
Talking to the camera.
Okay.
Why have you made tithing a priority?
I'm not ready.